Could have had to have a pod done by now. That conversation we just had.
That's how it always is, right?
It's always, dude. We get all the good stuff out before we start recording. Then we start recording. It's like, shit, what do we talk about now?
Repeat.
Yeah, I know it. Let's try to run back through it again. Act natural.
Welcome back to Young Money Mindset, hosted by Careccia and Robbie Holycross. From the ground up, where we talk about mindset, real estate, the hustle, and everything to help you achieve your dreams.
Cool. Well, yeah, we'll shoot the shit and then let's jump into it.
Cool.
Sorry. In your ear, sorry. my bad. All right, guys. Welcome back to Young Money Mindset. Super excited to have Dylan Schwarn here on the podcast with us. Appreciate you coming in today, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely, man.
Super stoked.
Let's kick it off. Well, Dylan's got a $10 million listing right now in Paradise Valley. So he's a luxury real estate agent. He was formerly the director of operations?
Manufacturing.
Manufacturing.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So formerly director of manufacturing at Dutch Brothers Coffee. Made the transition into real estate. Now he's a luxury real estate agent. He's got a $10 million listing, a $3.4 million listing, and a $1.8 million listing. So absolutely killing it out there. And let's jump right into it, man. So let me kind of like walk me through like your success. I know it's been a journey. We originally met, I want to say about 1.5 years ago on a panel we did together. So kind of walk me through your transition into getting into real estate, and then we can kind of unpack it from there.
Yeah. So, man, I had never done anything like real estate before. I was, like you said, I was working for Dutch Bros Coffee out in Oregon. Their corporate headquarters out there, small little town, about 30 miles from where I grew up. And I was in the apparel industry, screen printing, sourcing stuff overseas in China and things like that. And Dutch Bros was actually one of our clients. And we had several, construction workers and, all these random little businesses that we were screen printing for. But Dutch Bros was kind of our bread and butter. And we had a really good working relationship with them. And we got to the point where they were like, hey, man, we want to do this in-house. So my buddy owned the company, and I was kind of running operations for him. And they decided they wanted to bring all the apparel in-house, and through months of negotiating and working things out, they ended up acquiring our whole warehouse, of screen printing, manufacturing, sourcing, all that stuff. So pretty cool transition. I went from, kid that had dropped out of school to work with my buddy's clothing line, and then transitioned in from the clothing line into the screen printing world. And, manufacturing and sourcing. But then all of a sudden I'm a director at a corporate company that, like, once I got there, I realized how many people were trying to work for this company. And, I grew up, Dutch Bros was hometown company, and they were awesome, but I didn't ever, think much of it because it was just always there. And all of a sudden I'm a director overseeing a whole team, working with all the franchisees corporate-wide and helping them with all their apparel needs. So at the time there was 15,000 employees, and I think since I've left 4 years ago now, it's tripled. It's blown up. I left, there was 300 stands. I think there's coming up on 800, 7 something right now. So the amount of employees they have is crazy, and most people don't realize it, but when you pull up to a Dutch Bros stand, they're always wearing Dutch Bros clothes.
Oh yeah.
And Dutch Bros provided one garment a month to every employee in the company. And then on top of that, franchisees had the option to buy custom goods for their employees and kind of just hook them up with cool gear. So I was that relationship from franchisee to apparel, and, getting them, working with the art team and things like that to get them all the goods that, abided by the guidelines for art, and making sure that everything was approved through corporate and things like that. But we were basically a small little entity separate from Dutch Bros, but all sitting under the Dutch Bros umbrella. So that was super cool. Got to travel a lot with them. They had private planes. Got to do some cool trips, go on to concerts and sporting events. Got to know the owners really well, and they became awesome people, awesome friends and family of ours. And so throughout all that, I met my now wife, who was a news anchor in my hometown. She had moved out, never been to Oregon in her life, and took a job sight unseen. Well, she flew out with her dad, I guess. They kind of checked out the area to see if they liked it or whatnot. And she was like, cool. She had the opportunity to be the morning news anchor. And so I had seen her a couple times on TV, and
No way. So
You're like,
you
I
saw
want-
her on
you're like, I want
TV,
that
you're like,
one.
hey.
yeah,
That's
and
so
I'll take
cool.
her.
might have lurked a little bit on social. And at the time, we hadn't quite made the transition from Guru Inc., which was our like kind of screen printing marketing agency, over to Dutch Bros. And me and my buddy who owned the company, we were actually in line at a Dutch Bros. And back in Oregon, they're a lot smaller than they are out here, so they actually have traffic on both sides. Like cars can pull up on both sides, and so we were in one lane. She was like 4 cars back in the opposite lane, so we're like facing each other. And she's in a news car. She'd just come from a story. And I'm like, yo, bro, like, that's that chick I was telling you. So back then they didn't even have a POS system. So I was just like, hey, can you just charge my card and I'll buy her drink? And so they just like, I don't even know how they do it. They just charge you, I guess, for like $5 or $10 or something like that. Like, you know, she's good. So she got up there and they're like, oh, like the guys at Guru bought your drink. And she was like, oh, cool, thanks. Like she had just come from some like murder scene. She was like kind of down and she was like super stoked, like, oh my gosh, like coffee, that's all, you know, whatever. So we go our separate ways. And you know, it's been a few weeks, and out at the bars one night, and she's out with the crew, and I was with some mutual friends that were kind of all in the same group. And I went up to her up to the bar. I was like, hey, what's up? My name's Dylan. I was like, I was the one that bought you that drink. And she was like, oh, thanks, cool. And she turned around back with her friends and just like started talking at the bar. I was like, no, I'm like not giving this guy time of day. She says the story is a little bit different, but long story short, we kind of started hanging out with the same group of friends. And the crew that I was hanging out with were like all employees of the news station. So small town, you don't see a lot of like good-looking professionals just like randomly out of nowhere. Like there's no draw to the small town that we're in, other than like maybe a few jobs. So I was just kind of like, who are all these people that I keep seeing out of the bars? Anyways, we just kind of kept seeing each other over and over again. And finally one night, I'll just say we ended up connecting, got her phone number, and from there we got 3 kids now.
That's awesome, brother.
Yeah, so
That's super cool, man. And
Yeah.
what so when did all that happen? How many years ago was that?
yeah, so back in like 2016 is when the merger from from Guru to Dutch happened, and that's like right about when we met, maybe 2-3 months later. So we met in 2016. We dated for about two and a half years. We got married in 2018. And awesome wedding down in so my wife, she's originally from Southern California, spent about half her life in Tucson for her dad's job, had brought them out there and then back to California. So we went down south, did it in Southern California and downtown LA.
Nice.
Got
Very cool.
friends and family, everyone came down. It was super fun. Just downtown LA's like, I mean, it's just a bunch of buildings, right? Like,
Yeah.
so it's like everyone was at the same hotel. Everyone was hanging out for a few days, and we just had a blast. So that was 2018, and I cut out a lot of dating all the way to marriage. But basically, when I met my wife, you know, she was like, "Hey, I think you're cool. I like you. We've been hanging out for a while. Like, what are we doing here? Are we dating?" You know, I was like, "What? Yeah, what are we?" So it really came down to like, she was like, "Hey, I like you a lot, but I'm not trying to live in Medford, a little small town, you know, like coming from Southern California. She comes from a lot of like culture and diversity in her family, and we're in this small little town with none of that. Nothing's going on. It's like, this isn't where I see myself like raising a family and doing life. So I was like, yeah, like I'm down to make a move if we're still in a good position and, you know, dating, and, you know, we feel like we're ready to make that move together as, you know, as a couple. So we end up getting married, agreeing like, yeah, like I'm down. So I think her fear was like she knew that that's where I grew up. That's where I had all my good core group of friends. But all my family had moved up north to Portland, about 4.5 hours away. So I kind of was in a spot where like, yeah, I got this cool job. I love what I do. But I was more fixated on a family and, figuring out another life situation, work, whatever, not being too stuck on just that one job. So we get married, and within a few months we're expecting our first baby, and we're kind of like, what are we doing?
Wasted no time, huh?
Yeah, no, wasted no time. We were, a little bit quicker than we thought originally, but no, it was all perfect. It was meant to be, and we, so baby's coming. I'm working for Dutch still. She had just left news and started doing PR for another company. Just news is a brutal grind, especially the morning show. You're up at 2, 3 in the morning to get to the station, get ready, and she was like, we just didn't want that for like a family. Yeah, it's like,
it's grueling. Yeah,
totally. So she's ready to get out, and I think she's like scared to tell me, like, what are we doing here, and we're starting to look to buy homes, and finally I come home from work one day and she's like, why are we looking to buy a house? Like we're not staying here. And I was like, yeah, like hit me too, and so I'm like scrambling, like what am I gonna do? I don't have a college degree. I love what I do. I'm in the apparel industry, but we knew we wanted to stay on the West Coast. Her family's in Southern California, mine are in Oregon. We didn't like we're just West Coasties. Like that's just how we were gonna make the move. It's gonna be somewhere, California or Arizona was really our two options. Maybe Texas. It was like the furthest we were gonna go. And she had spent a lot of time in Tucson, and her family would always come up to Arizona up to Scottsdale for baseball games, basketball games, things like that. Little weekend staycations. So we basically just picked that we were moving to Phoenix, and we're like, we got to figure it out. She's like 2 months pregnant now. I'm like, I'm on like whatever website trying to figure out like what can I do for work, that I could afford rent. She's going to be at home. Like my goal is to keep her at home as long as possible before having to go back to whatever she's going to do. And ideally, hopefully she doesn't have to, we really wanted her to just be able to raise the kids. And so we end up picking Arizona. I can't figure out what I want to do, and real estate was just kind of always on my mind. I was like, I see these people making money. I see like you don't have to have a college degree. I'm like, things are kind of, my mind's spinning. And finally one day I'm like doing all this research on it. I'm like, babe, I'm gonna go out to Arizona, use my vacation time, and I'm gonna do this 9-day crash course. And it was before COVID, so you had to do your schooling in a classroom, in a person. So I'm in Oregon. I have 2 weeks of vacation time, and I tell her this is what I'm going to do, and she's, at this point she doesn't care what I'm going to do as long as I'm taking some sort of action. Yeah. She's like, let's go. So I let my work know. They were just, Dutch Bros was such an awesome company to work for. I wanted to be transparent with them. I'm like, what I was doing. I'm going to go take a vacation by myself. Like, what's going on? So it's like. They were super supportive. They're like, take more time if you need it. We'll work with you. Come back and work as long as you need to get ready to make that move. Like, your position here with us is good until you let us know.
It's crazy that a job would really give you that opportunity to be like, hey, I know you're leaving, but as much time as you need here, you got it. That's rare.
Yeah, like super rare. And that's like, even just reassured that like, I was working for such an amazing company that like I did the right thing by letting them know, because they just reciprocated it right back.
That's amazing.
That mutual respect.
Totally. Yeah. So I go out, I do this 9-day crash course. I had only been to Arizona one time in my life for like a weekend, and that was in Tucson. And then I did a maybe 10-hour day trip for work. We flew in and flew out the same day with Dutch Bros for an event we were going to throw out here. So all I knew was downtown Phoenix and the like private sector of the airport. That was it. Wow. And like I was like, cool, we're doing it. So I flew out. I'm trying to book a hotel for 2 weeks, and I'm like, man, I can't afford this. Like, what am I doing? Long story short, like my uncle had recently remarried, and his new wife was like, hey, my mom lives out there. You can reach out to her. She'd love to have you stay with me. And I'm like,
had you met her before?
The mom or
yeah.
No, I had only met the new wife one time.
Yeah.
So like my new aunt, essentially, I'd only met her once, but she's like, my mom, she's out there, she loves it. She's like 89 years old, living in a 55 and over community in Ahwatukee, and so I'm like, I think I got to do it. So I reach out to her, and she's like, oh, I'd love to have you. I got a car for you, everything. So I come out, she wines and dines me. We become like best friends. I'm like hanging out with this like 90-year-old lady every night, sending photos back to my wife. Like we're drinking margs on the back porch with like all her like little friends. They do like
cool.
So. I do this schooling 9 days. It was brutal because I knew I had to pass this test before I go home. And everyone I'm talking to is like, oh yeah, I'm like 3 times. I've taken the test like 3, 4, 5 times. I'm hearing these crazy numbers of like 10 times to pass, and I'm like, I don't have time for that. I have to pass this test. So I'm stressing. I'm going home every night just reading these like textbooks and note cards and all these things I'm making just so I'm like, this has to happen. I don't have another option. So fast forward, take the school test. I do 9 days straight. On the 10th day, I did a 12-hour review class. And then on the 11th day, I took the school test, passed that, which we all, you have to pass that to just take
right.
the actual test. Passed that first try, so I was like, all right, took a deep breath. I think I can do this. And I have my flight booked home that was on a Saturday. And then I have my flight booked for Monday afternoon, and my test is Monday morning. So I'm like if I don't pass, I'm going home, and I don't have,
Yeah.
And so I take the test. They're all weird about it. They like slide you this paper to be like confidential.
Yeah,
I'm
You're
like,
gonna try to find it on the
I open.
So
I wait. I'm like in an envelope. I walk out, and I'm like.
Yeah.
I'm reading this paper, and I'm like, I legit didn't know if I passed or not, and I'm like reading, I'm like scanning it up and down. I should have just read it, but I'm like, I'm expecting like a big like passed or something. But it's like
red or green.
Yeah, and so finally I figure out I pass. I'm freaking like, I can finally breathe. But little did I know that was like gonna be the easiest part of the journey.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I fly home, and I have a couple last little things you have to do, your contract class and things, but like essentially I'm now going to be a licensed agent, and little did I know that I wasn't going to make any money for the next like year.
Yeah.
So we made the move out. I made the move out like 4 months later, and I left my wife. At this point, she's like 9 months pregnant. She's due in August, and I move out in June. And she stays back to finish up work and do some final doctor's appointments. And we just both quit our careers. We have a very little savings, and I stay back with now who I call my grandma, that let me stay with her during schooling. And while I'm there, I'm like looking at apartments. What can I afford? What can't I afford? I couldn't afford anything, and like with no income coming in. And she's like, "Hey, I leave for the summer, back to my house in Oregon. Why don't you guys just stay here as long as you need to?" And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
Sure.
So I call my wife. She's like, I'm thinking, she's gonna want a spot to like have like a little nursery to nest with the baby coming and all this stuff. And she's like, done. 2 weeks, put in her notice. She's like, she didn't care anything to get out, to get her out here, which we obviously just wanted to be together, especially with her being pregnant. It was tough. You're getting phone calls of how doctor's appointments go, and
I can only
she's
imagine.
sick and all these, so it was tough on us for sure. But we come out, and it was like just a God blessing, dude. Like we had this house that we got to just live in for the next like 4 months with she didn't charge us anything. They didn't have to pay the power bill that we're running through the summer in the middle of July and August. That was, it was just crazy. So this lady, I literally had no idea who she was 2 months prior, is now letting us live in her house rent free, utility free. And it was really what got us out to Arizona. And at that point, I had originally joined a little team with my home group. I was driving Uber. I was working in a Dutch Bros stand. I had never worked in a stand before. I never made coffee.
At the ground level.
Never made coffee. Straight to the roots of where it all began, though. And I knew all the franchisees from my past job, so I called my boy Josh, and I was like, yo, I need to work in a stand. I got to be able to pay my car bill. I was like, so he got me dialed in, got me set up, and I was opening the stand at like 4 a.m. I'd get there at 4:30. We'd be open by 5, and I'd work till like 11:30, and then I'd go into my office and try and figure out how I was going to find my first client till, I don't know, 2:33, and then I'd hop in my car and drive Uber until I could buy us some dinner or something.
Yeah. How long was that process? Like, when did you get your first client, and what did that look like?
So I ended up I closed one deal in August. It all worked out because basically the owner of my team was on vacation, and he couldn't help his client out, and they called last minute it was a lender referral. He's like, hey, can you take care of these? He's like, yeah, I got you, but he wasn't even in town, so he called me and was like, hey, I need you to find these guys a home. They were coming in from New Mexico that day, so I dropped everything, helped them find this spot, split it 50-50 or whatever. So I closed that one deal, but then I didn't close another deal for like 7 months.
What were you doing to find deals? What was were you cold calling?
So,
was that initial?
Yeah, so I was calling all the team I was on. It was just a couple agents and the owner, my buddy, that owned it, and he had a pretty big database of just that he had acquired over the years, and so I was just like cold calling those.
Calling the pond.
And I was brutal at it. I hated it. It's like I realized fast, like, cold calling was not going to be my one of my pillars. I was bad, and I hated it. Every time I call that number and I hit send, like, I just get this knot in my stomach. I don't want to do this, So I was like, how can I, what can I do that I enjoy?
Yeah.
And so, I ended up staying with him for about 2 months, August, September, October, 3 months, and realized I needed something that was going to allow me to. He was awesome, but I didn't have the structure of like a team where there was leads and systems and all this stuff. So that's when I decided I was going to join a new team. Yeah, so I knew I needed to find something else, another team. And I had been attending these. I was with my home group at the time, so I started attending these like masterminds, like brokerage-wide masterminds, and that was the first time I realized there was like so much more to this industry than like I was just so naive to like, oh, I'm just gonna go, I'm gonna just find clients on my own, and like where are they gonna come from? Like you were asking, like what were you doing? Like
right.
I wasn't really doing anything I should have been doing. I'm like showing up to the office like. Chopping it up, chatting, but not, but like, what you do you should be doing once you're successful and actually, can do that. But I wasn't really putting my head down and doing, I felt like I was at the time. I was in the thick of it. Baby's on the way. I'm scared, like no income. And so I started going to these masterminds, and I connected with Steve Valentine, who was still with my home group at the time. And he actually kind of sought after me after the mastermind. He came up to me and he was like, hey man, like, I don't know who you are, and I don't know why I'm doing this, but like based off the conversations we were having in the mastermind, he saw something in me, and he came over and he was like, wherever you're at right now, like you need to leave and you need to join a new team. And I was like, dang, like I knew it deep down, but I didn't want to admit it because I thought like, oh, I'm going to figure this out. So that was when reality hit. I went home that night and that afternoon, and I sit on the couch. It was like probably late September, early October now. And I got licensed in May, or May is when I started. So, it's been a few months. I closed that one deal. I haven't closed anything else. I'm watching at this point. Late September, we moved into an apartment up in Scottsdale. So like now I actually have rent due, and
got a little bit of that pressure. Yeah,
car payments are due every month, and like Dutch Bros is covering basically enough money to cover our 2 car payments, and then I have a little chunk of change of savings for rent for the next however many months I had, and driving Uber was gonna let me buy some groceries and things here and there. So
on the table.
So I go home and my wife's like, "What? Everything all right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." She like turns her back, and I just lost it. I broke down. I'd never had any emotion like that before. I'd never felt anything like that before, and she like I don't think she knew what to do. She was like, kind of give me a hug, like, "What's wrong?" And I just absolutely like broke down. I had no idea what to do. I had this baby. I had no income. I was like, I got all these bills to pay, and I have no lead anywhere in sight for a paycheck coming in. So Steve ended up giving me his contact information, and I followed up with him, and he connected me with Russell Wolf over at the Lawton team, and he's my guy. He called me one day and was like, "Hey, I don't get a lot of people reaching out to me saying like you need to call this guy, but Steve Valentine called me and told me that I needed to call you, and when someone like Steve does that, like I know I need to follow up." So he called me, we connected, and we just hit it off. He was amazing. He's such a good family man. Like when it comes down to like real estate as a whole, I wouldn't say he was like my mentor, but like being in the thick of life that I was in with like a new baby and trying to just tread water and survive for that season that I was in, he was I mean, he's what did it for me. So much love to Russell Wolf. But I got connected with them. I decided to join the Lawton team, and I didn't have any lead source coming in still. They had Zillow. That was their like bread and butter as far as leads. But at the time, they needed agents to show that they could convert before they were just going to throw you in. It was before before the pandemic hit, where the market just went bonkers. So it was like, I'm over here trying to get like Zillow reviews for that. I had to show I had like X amount of Zillow reviews. Well, I didn't even have even have closings. So I'm like trying to get people that I've like kind of shown some homes to to like say that I did a good job or something. And I was like, what? And then I finally, I started doing open houses, and that's where I was like, okay, I like this. I can do open houses. Like, I enjoy people. I love talking, and just finding some sort of connection with a random person is something that I find joy from. So I end up getting a client. They wouldn't share their information with me. They wouldn't sign in, all that. And I'm always the type that's like pretty like chill about that. Like, I'm not gonna be like, hey, here's a clipboard, like sign it, So they didn't want to. It was cool, no worries. But we just had really good conversation. And before they left, they took my card, and they called me like a week later, and they ended up buying the house that I was holding open. And so that was like my next closing. I had like kind of in sight. That was like October, November, December, January, probably February. Yeah, February is when I got my next closing. So from like May to February, I had the one in August, and then I finally got one more. Yeah. And then I had a sphere deal that kind of came through. Some friends that were becoming the operators at Dutch Bros down in Tucson. They're like, hey, do you know anyone in Tucson that can, help us? And I was like, I can do that. Yeah. So I'm driving 2.5 hours to Tucson and paying to another agent within the brokerage to open doors for us, because I didn't have like an e-key or anything. I wasn't part of the, the MLS down there yet. So little did I know I could just pay like $400 and like be a part of the MLS out there. So ended up doing that down the road. But so I started to get a couple closings, and then COVID hit. I was like, dude, like this is crazy. Like, this can't, like, be real. Like,
how was that with, like, a newborn at home when COVID hit, man? I
It
could only imagine, like, how scared you guys were.
oh,
you and
it
the
was
wife,
super scary. And I was still working for Dutch Bros at the time.
Were you working, too? And, like, were you worried about taking that back home with a new... Because my cousin he just had a newborn, too.
Yeah.
Right around that time. And, dude, they went full lockdown mode. Like, they didn't leave the house.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So, I mean... COVID hits, and it's like, there's this bug out there. Like, we don't know what's happening. People are dying. I'm working at Dutch Bros, and it's like, however many hundreds of people are coming through in a line on any given day or any given shift. So I come home one day, and it's like, things are starting to get worse of, like, are we shutting down or whatnot? And then finally, like, everything gets shut down except for essential, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I now I had like 2 closings, and I was like just stacking the like 6. They were both like sphere deals technically, so I had like, 6 to 8 grand for each one coming in. So I'm like, okay, like I can keep living this lifestyle of like nothing, but having the security of like, maybe 10, 12 grand in the bank. And so my wife's like, yeah, we agree. It wasn't worth it at the time. We didn't know that. Come to find out, it wasn't really as scary as it was. But like,
a heck of a lot going on.
Yeah.
There,
early on though,
no one knew.
It was scary though.
So
when
I got
they
this
shut everything off. I mean, it was scary.
I got this newborn baby that I'm still trying to figure out how to like keep alive, and it just wasn't worth the $500-$600 paycheck in my book to stay at Dutch. And they gave us the option. They were awesome. They were like, hey, we know people are not unsure about what's going on. Like, you can take a leave of absence for the, it was like take this leave of absence until we decide things are gonna, until we you either got to make a decision to come back or leave. And we got to the point where they were like, after like a month, I think they were like, okay, like we want people to start coming back or step away. And at that point, I was like, I had just gotten into Flex. Zillow Flex, which was going to provide me with, some hopefully some good leads to start closing deals. And I took the month of April off completely, just because of COVID. We were scared. We didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, everybody's hunkered down.
And then May 1st, I got into the Zillow program because I had closed those 2 deals and got some reviews. And they're like, hey, we need some help. But like the market was still kind of weird at that point. Like it hadn't really taken off for another like month or 2 when, and quit Dutch, was getting our stimmies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I wasn't making any money. So
Yeah.
I was able to get those checks, and like looking back is like, between that and those 2 closings, I was able to like really focus on real estate, which is what I wanted to be doing. I didn't want to be driving. I quit driving Uber. I didn't want anyone in my car and things like that. So May 1st, I was on with Zillow Flex, and that's really the beginning of like what I would consider the start of my real estate journey. All that time leading up, basically a year of nothing. Just trying to survive. And then that's when my real estate career took off. So I ended up finishing 2020 with, I think, 21 transactions.
Wow.
And I had closed 2 up till May. And then, basically I got in the Flex, and I started closing 2 to 3 a month just through that platform. And the checks weren't great because, we're paying Zillow, then we're paying the team, and then you're...
Yeah.
But... for me, it was
The
like
repetitions
I
too,
didn't
though.
care what I was making. I mean, I wanted to make money, but like I wasn't worried about the split. Like I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, those are terrible splits." Like, yeah, they are, but I had nothing, so I was just stoked to have a client to show a house to,
And it's
to
consistent.
have a conversation.
You know they're coming in.
Totally, and so I think they still laugh over there at the Latin team. At one day I answered 9 calls. And they want you answering like 2 to 4, but I didn't care. I was like, my phone rang, I hit answer, and I ended up closing, I think, like 5 deals between that one day of answering 9 calls. And so I was like, I set this rule where it's like, you can't, after like 4, like you got to get permission from your team lead to like keep answering. Yeah, because it was all, first come, first serve. So it's like we're all sitting down around waiting for the phone to ring, and whoever hits that one first on the connection gets it.
So, it's competitive too for you guys that don't know. Like that phone rings.
But it rings to the whole team, or it's round robin.
Dude,
but
there's guys that have on their days that they're on for Zillow, they have an auto answer on their phone. So if their phone rings, it automatically answers because it then goes to an operator that starts talking, and it allows them to hit the one. So
you
even
if second,
so you have, and it's like it answers, and even if you don't hit the one, then it just goes to the next person. But at least you have that first opportunity.
Yeah, my boy was saying he was in the shower, and he's like, "Dude, I took a Zillow call in the shower the other day." I was like, "Bro, that's next level,
some
bro."
weird places, man.
Yeah, I was like, "Whoa, that's crazy."
Dude, and they're very like. They watch your metrics a lot, so it's like how many calls are you answering, how many are you converting, what's your follow up? I mean, it was like Zillow became my 9 to 5 like day job almost, and then trying to focus on sprinkling in other transactions outside of that.
Do you think that structure helped you though? Because I know a lot of agents like I feel like the Zillow structure of having that like lead come in. The the accountability of like, hey, how many calls did you take? How many did you convert? Like that, those metrics, those KPIs, I think is so important, especially early on in your career to like set you up to succeed, and then take that database and keep moving on.
1,000%. And for me, I needed the structure because I thought I wanted to do it on my own, but I realized there was so much I didn't know, and so. I'm over here paying, these splits. I didn't care what my splits were. I just wanted to build this book of business up. And after a while, it becomes, like I think Robbie was saying, like repetitive. Like it's just like that day to day, same thing over and over again, following up, taking those calls. And I knew that that's not what I wanted long term. But I 1,000% recommend that for any new agent is to take on those leads, take those Zillow connections. And pay those splits all day long and close as many as you can.
I interview a lot of agents, and it's so crazy to see. Like that's the first question every single agent asks: "What's the splits?"
Right? What's the splits?
That's true.
And
what's
like,
the splits?
That's all they ask, but it's like they don't really see it from like. To me, when you said like just the wisdom you have, Dylan, of like knowing like who cares about the split, like I kind of did a similar thing, but like just being able to say who cares about the split, and focus on the learning part. And learning how to really convert and qualify and all everything that comes with the lead, and then being able to worry about the split more like down the line.
Totally. I'll to this day I'll pay any split if it makes sense.
Absolutely.
Like I still pay splits, on the new team I'm on. I don't care what the split is if the situation makes sense. So for my time with Zillow, that split made sense. Did I want to make more? Did I want to pay less? Absolutely. But there was no way I was going to be able to. The repetition of the conversations, the phone calls, the amount of conversations I had answering those Zillow calls would have taken me 10 years of trying to find leads to be asked questions that you would have never thought of on your own, to be like learning the business. There's so many things that I stumbled and, like, what's the tax rate out there? And I'm like, things you would have never thought about, because you got people calling from all over the country because Zillow's the main platform.
Yeah, it seasons you quick when you're going through it like
Real
that.
quick.
And you were smart enough to know, like, hey, I shouldn't go try this. Maybe I should learn how it's done on the back end before I go out and do it myself. So how long did you do that for then before you were like, all right, I've got a good grasp on this. Like maybe I should try to figure out my own splits and do my own thing.
Yeah, so started that. I got in May of 2020, and I rode Zillow and the Lawton team all the way out until August of 2022. So just, like 8 months ago, 10 months ago now. And throughout that whole time period, I always kept my eyes open for opportunities, but I never wanted to make a lateral jump. It always had to be something that was a different situation that was going to help me grow in a different way. A lot of teams out there are doing the same thing, but both you guys are on teams that provide very similar opportunities with the Zillow Flex leads and things like that. I didn't want to just be like, oh, I'm going to leave Lawton and go over to this team just because I wanted a new set of new faces or whatever. Like
100%.
it had to make sense for what my goals were becoming, and I realized I really wanted to, get into that luxury space. I closed one big deal, and I saw that paycheck come in, and I was like,
It's
dang.
a bit different.
Yeah.
It's a similar amount of work too.
Yeah.
Very similar, very similar.
Numbers, yeah.
But it takes a certain personality, I think, and it takes a certain person. And I don't really talk about myself a lot, but I think something that I'm good at that took a long time for me to recognize, and honestly, it took my wife showing me and telling me is I have a unique, personality that I can connect and relate with a lot of people. And I think in the luxury space, it's not just a matter of opening a door and being like, hey, yeah, do you like it? Cool. Follow up. Do you want to buy a house? It's there's definitely people like that in the luxury space, whatever. But as a whole, I think it takes a certain type of person.
It's very connections based.
Yeah.
And I've found, I'm sure you probably found a similar thing when you're working with the luxury clients with the drive and the type of person you are. It's easier for you to have a connection because they have similar goals. They have similar interests. They went through what you went through to grind to get to where they're at.
Yep.
So you can have an easier conversation with that person than you would with a mobile home client. Maybe
Totally.
they're good people, but the goals aren't as big as yours. So
Yeah.
you're connecting with them on a different level.
Yeah. And that's exactly where not only the people that you're working with, but that are working, that you're helping buy homes with, but finding a brokerage or a team that was also going to do that for me. Being around, just the people that you want to aspire to be, and so I'm, I know we all talk about it. It's like the people you're around or who you become and all that, but
It's true, man.
It's true.
As cliche as it sounds, it's so true.
It's so true, and I still have a ton of friends at the Lawton team. I still stay in touch with them. I'll pop into the office every so often. They're like, "What, are you coming back?" I'm like, "No, no chance." Just because I'm a people person, I can't help myself. I'm like, I have to be around.
How did that go? How did that departure go? Walk us through that transition. You're with, is it Forbes Global Partners and Retzi?
Yeah, so Retzi's the brokerage, and we're partnered with Forbes Global Properties. So luxury boutique brokerage out of Scottsdale, PV, and there was a team that I had been following, Spouses That Sell Houses, Smith, Alex and Leslie Smith. So they were with North & Co. at the time, and I had known someone that was doing videography work for them, and his wife was doing all their social media, and we both used to all be at my home group together. That's where we met. And so I had hit him up because, like I was saying, I was always trying to keep an eye out for, who's doing what in the industry and I was not from Arizona, so I didn't know a lot of people. So I had to do a lot of work to try and figure out who were the heavy hitters, what were the teams that were, So I hit him up. I was like, "Yo, what do you think of North & Co.?" And he had nothing but great things to say about it, and I had my eye on it for quite a while. Well, I'd say July of last year, I had hit him up again, and I was like, "Yo, what's the deal? What are you guys doing over there? I'm seeing these projects that the Smith team was doing, and following their social media, and they do doing some cool stuff." And he was like, "Honestly, man, you should meet with Alex. We're looking to maybe bring on an agent." And so he connected us in July, and we went and grabbed coffee, and it was just super casual, what are you guys looking to do as a team? He wanted to know what I was looking to do, and know a little bit more about me. But they weren't looking, a lot of these teams they want numbers, so they'll take on anyone. But they weren't looking for that. They wanted, I was going to be their sole agent as far as actually doing production. So everyone that was working on the team were licensed, but more helping in different avenues. So we connected in July. I went on a trip that summer to Hawaii, and the whole time I was there, it was all I was thinking about was man, I want to join that team, but what were they going to be able to provide me? Because I knew I still needed some sort of lead source, and at the time they couldn't really guarantee me anything. They were I promise if you come, you're gonna be around top agents and you're going to, be able to elevate your game and all this stuff. And like, while it all sounds good, I was just nervous. Now I'm at 2 kids. And I think we might have just found out we were expecting 2. Yeah, we just found out. Third one's on the way. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, like I can't do what I did before, like quitting my career and starting completely over again. Like, while it wasn't going to be that, because I had some momentum and some past clients, and I was just very thorough. Like, all my other moves were like just like irrational, just like whatever I had to do to survive. And now I was like, okay, like I'm not making a ton of money, but like I got enough, and that I need to make the right move.
And there's people out there listening to the podcast possibly that are like in a position like that, where it's like you have some momentum going, business is going well, you might have some more money in the bank, and it's like you're kind of just searching for that next level. Yeah. And it's like you have that uncertainty around like, what is that next goal, right? Like,
totally.
Where is that next move?
Making sure you're not moving laterally, like
totally.
100%. Yeah.
So August comes, July we meet. August comes around, I meet with him again. I'm like, dude, I gotta meet this guy. Again. We go to the same spot, grab coffee. At this time, they had just left North & Co. and started at Retzi. And for them, it was just a move that they needed to make for elevating, what their personal goals were. And they had just started working with, so met with Alex and knew I needed to make this transition, but wasn't 100% sure how I was going to make this move, just because I knew I needed some sort of leads coming in. The market had just finally started to shift after like 2 years of just absolute chaos, and everyone was buying a house. Like, all of a sudden it was like leads were starting to slow up, and what's the market going to do? Is the world going to crash? Like, it's like things were just going crazy. So I had 2 deals coming in that, like, my client was like, I had been showing them homes, and I was like, okay, if I think they're going to make a move, like then I need to make this move and like stop. I didn't have anything in escrow, so I knew I didn't want to like start another one and then have to wait the 30 day, whatever. Right. So my client, they were past clients. I had bought them a few different homes at this point, and I knew they were serious. So they're like, yeah, we're ready to commit to this house. And it was like in the morning, they wanted to write the offer later, and I called my wife and I was like, babe, I'm making the move. She's like, wait, what? She's like we didn't talk about this. I was like, well, let's talk about it right now. And so I was explaining to her, that I felt like this was going to be the right move. She's like, cool. So what are they doing? Are you getting leads from this new team? And I was like, no, but like, I think there's a chance I can be like, they said that I can be their co-list agent when they start to get some listings, and but there was nothing guaranteed. Like, it wasn't like you are our co-list agent. It was like, from time to time we might throw you on a listing or 2. And I was like, just trusting Alex. When we met both times, he was like, I promise you, if you come in and you do the work and you surround yourself with these top agents, like, I won't let you fail. Basically, he was like, I'm not gonna let you do that. It's like, all right, like I just like, it was like one of those God things where it was like, as much as I wanted more clarity, I didn't have it, but I knew I needed to make this move.
You had the faith in that, yeah.
I knew I needed to make the move, and I had spent like a couple years trying to find that move, and I had interviewed with tons of different brokerages and agents, and like just like on the side, like kept it to myself, as far as like, not showcasing that to my co-agents and stuff, because I didn't want it to look like I didn't want to leave Lawton unless it was the right thing. Like, I genuinely enjoyed the people that were there. George himself, I had a good relationship with, which is tough when there's 250 agents on the team. He can't know everyone, and but I had I just had a few different situations there that I knew it was time. And so I called my wife, told her I was making that move, and she was like, I think she was kind of like, you're dumb, but like, I'm gonna trust you because you've made it work so far. And We never had that conversation, like that she felt that way, but that was just kind of like maybe the feeling I was sensing. And so at that point, I was like, all right, I'm making this move. I know I got to write this contract later. So I call my team lead and I was like, hey, I'm going to make the move. And I got an opportunity to join this other team. And it's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And she was caught off guard for sure. But I had been through, I think, 5 team leads in 2.5 years at Lawton. Like, it was kind of just it was just like the next person, and I enjoyed everyone. It wasn't for me anymore. And that was totally fine. Like, I would recommend anyone getting into the industry to do the same path that I took as far as getting in there and getting those Zillow leads, whether it's Lawton or I think I've referred more people to Lawton since I've left than when I was there, honestly. Like, I think it's super important to be around a structured team that can provide resources, leads, and systems. And so at that point, I hadn't even told Alex I was joining. He was like, yeah, so I was meeting him later to go view a couple properties they were in the middle of building too. And so let Lawton know I'm leaving, call Alex, hey, I'll meet you at this property. We're going to walk to, they do a lot of I wouldn't call them flips because they're full renovations, like $1 million homes turned into $4 million homes type deal. So added square footage and, just everything's done proper, not just like a fix and flip type, lipstick. Exactly. So I meet him up at one of the properties and we're chatting and I was like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm joining you. He's like, wait, what? So decided to make the move, left Lawton, write the contract, get it under contract. I'm like, thank the Lord. That was my only deal I had, secured at that point. And then I had another client reach out. They were writing an offer. I'm ready to write an offer. So I was like, cool, I got these 2 deals. I had a little chunk of change from some good closings I had leading up to where I was at. So I knew I had like 5 months if I was like very tight with my budget that we were going to be fine if I didn't close anything, So right. I'm like, I'm not going 5 months without a deal, but no like the market's shifting. So I'm like, I might go a few months. And actually, I think it was closer to like 7 or 8 months, honestly. And so I closed the one deal. We're the day before closing on my second deal that I thought I had, my client calls me and says he's backing out. He's like, things are getting weird in the world, and like I can't do it. He gave up his earnest. He backed out last minute. Clients, like the sellers, tried to like sue him, and he's like, whatever. Like I gave you my earnest money. Like, so now I thought I had 2. I just had the one, but the one was the bigger one. So that was the one that was really going to pay me good. So I then went September, October. I went November, December, January. Now at my new team in brokerage. With nothing and nothing in sight either. Like I knew I had stuff coming, but it was like nothing was ready to to snap and like actually ride on or anything. So now I'm starting to second guess my decision. Did I make the right move? I saw people leave Lawton and join Lawton in that time period. Like they left and came back, God. And I'm like, no matter what I do, I can't do that. Like I know I got to just stick to it. And in that time period, I was able to get on a listing, and that was like, it was a smaller one, but it was like something. And Alex kept telling me, he's like, dude, just stick to your daily activities, hold open houses, and like things are going to start falling into place. And January, I had my biggest month ever. So like it came pretty quick. February. January I got everything under contract. February I had my biggest month ever. So I went November, December, January without closing anything, and then the next month I have I make more money in 1 month than some people make in a year. So it's like that's the crazy part about this industry is like you never know when it's gonna happen, but like as long as like you stick to the grind and you do those daily activities, I personally don't think that you'll ever fail.
Yeah.
If you don't do them properly and you kind of, BS your way through it and you just act like you're doing these daily activities, but you're just being a realtor and chopping it up, then yeah, absolutely.
If you fail, you're lying to yourself about something.
Totally.
You're not tracking your metrics. You're playing realtor,
Yep. So from when I joined the team to now, there was a lot of things that had shifted within the team, and Alex had started to get super heavy into his development business that he has. So he's got 4 multifamily unit, like 12 to 15 unit projects in the works right now, and in all different phases. So like some are like still in development, some are they're closing the last couple units. So across the board, he's swamped with all these multifamilies. On top of that, we do about 4 of these luxury flips or renovations a year as well. So he's dealing with all that comes with those projects alone, his development, and just doesn't have the time to be fully present on these listings that we're getting, which he had built these relationships over the years with some luxury builders. So we're basically listing like 80-90% of a couple different builders' homes that they're giving us, basically. Not giving us, it's our...
Yeah, they build them.
Yeah. And we're listing them for them. So now I've fallen in where I become the co-list agent on all those properties. So super unique position to fall into. Exactly what I was hoping for and looking, wanting, but there was no guarantee that was going to happen. But with, the way Alex's business, the development side has taken off, and his wife, and I co-list most of the properties. Alex will be on some of them with me. It's day and night from, what I was doing before, just answering these phone calls, trying to meet someone at a house to like, now I'm meeting people at these luxury properties with their, they're showing up with their agents and I'm giving them a tour of this, property.
Would you say it's like kind of on the like 2 kind of opposite sides of the spectrum? Like
totally.
Like one is like the higher volume, and then one is like more on the luxury.
Yeah, so
transactions.
Totally different space, and like it took me a long time in the industry to realize there is no one right way to do it, but also like we all have our own pillars of what we're good at, and like that's where we're getting our lead sources from. And in my head, it was like, yeah, but everyone has their own, but we're all trying to do the most deals. And while like, of course, we all want more deals, it's not always the case. Because like when I met with Alex at the beginning of the year for my goals, I told him how many homes I wanted to close, and he was like, "No, I think you should take like 5 to 10 homes off that list, but add."
The volume.
Add like 10 million on to how the volume of what you want to close.
Would you say that kind of balances into like quality of life? Because that's one thing personally like I've been looking at a lot, is because I fell in the trap of like deal, and that equates to commission, and we can get into like volume versus the transaction number, but like also I've been looking at like what does that quality of life look like?
Totally.
Right? Like,
so.
I think that if you want to speak on that for a moment, because I know on the luxury side, it seems like I'm curious to see how that looks. More on the luxury side.
Well, I mean, that day-to-day grind of, transaction after transaction is brutal. And when you're hungry and you don't have any business, like you're going to answer your phone at any time of the day. You're going to respond to texts at any time of the night. And when you're married and you have a kid and 2 kids and now 3 kids, like that's brutal on a relationship. But like, my wife and I went into it knowing like, okay, that it's going to take this to like get to where we want to be. But there was definitely times where my wife's like, what are you doing? Like, we're in the middle of doing something. And I'm like, all of a sudden I'm gone in another room, locking the door so the kids don't run in. And I'm like taking these calls and, hey, I got to leave. Someone wants to see a house at 7:00 tonight. And she's like, wait, we had plans to go to dinner. And I'm like, yeah, but how are we going to buy the dinner if I don't sell this house? And like my mindset was just so wrong for so long. And I don't think it was wrong. I think it was I was scared that like if I didn't answer this call, if I didn't answer this text, like these clients were going to leave me and they were going to go find someone else and I'll never have a deal. And so I have to answer them immediately. And come to find out, like as I, keep meeting these clients and becoming closer to these clients and they become actual relationships, it's like they're texting me like, hey, don't respond now, but like they actually value your time and respect your time and your family, and once they know a little bit about you,
it's like we forget like our clients are human beings with
totally
as well. Like they have a job, right? And they don't get interrupted.
When they go home to dinner, they're not getting called by their boss.
I know. So me and my fiance Katrina, like we both being agents now, it's like we've struggled with that at times where it's like, especially with both of us, it's tough, right? It's like you don't want to bring that home, and so we've had these boundaries put in place. But that was one thing we talked about on our walk was like, these people have lives, right? Our clients have lives, and it's like sometimes as agents, as professionals, we forget. Like you said, you feel like you're not going to get the client right if you don't respond right away.
I think that's the difference too, though, between like taking a Zillow lead where you're like through this platform and the phone rings to you and to them you're a Zillow employee.
That's all they
you
think.
Getting out and making a real connection with these people
and trying to educate them. Like that Alex person that connected you to me. It's a robot. Is a robot actually, and I don't work for Zillow. I work with Zillow, but like we're two different, and so it's like once they start to realize that, but
it's hard to bridge that gap. I think it is. It's difficult because I can't tell you how many of those flex calls I've gotten where it's like they have no intentions of actually buying the home, but it's like per your team, per Zillow, it's like you got to go show them it, and it's like. I'm in, Mesa, and I'm driving to
the West Side.
Like, it's just great. But that's part of the struggle, right?
Yeah.
I think it ultimately shows though what agents are here to be around long term.
Yeah.
And what agents aren't.
1,000%.
Because a lot of those agents can't get through that.
Right? I had a ton of agents that would be like, hey, do you want this lead? Like, I don't want to drive out there and show that house. And I'm like, yeah, I want that. Like. No, I don't want to leave my family, and no, I don't want to go on a Sunday afternoon to do this. But like, I'm probably only gonna make $3,000 or $4,000 if I close this deal. But who are they gonna introduce me to? And how am I gonna resell their house when they're ready to move in a couple years? And is it gonna give me enough money to be able to go do something cool with my family down the road, whatever? And like, I hate the like mindset of like. Oh, I'm going to grind now so that like in 5-10 years, like I'm there for my kids. Like I think it's important to be there at all times, but finding that balance of like, yeah, like I still got to put in the work. I still got to do the time. But I think as realtors, we also think we're working all the time. When like if you actually broke down the metrics of how much work we're doing some days, like it's a few hours a day, a couple hours a day. Like we just happen to do it 7 days a week. And that's where it's like trying to find that balance of family versus grinding.
One thing that jumped out to me too is like you recognized and early on in your career realized like cold calling isn't for me, right? Like open houses is my pillar. So it's good to understand like where you fit in on that spectrum because like I can't tell you how many people I feel like they try to force something that they're not, right? Like I'm not the open house guy. Not that I don't like the connection. I love it. I enjoy open houses. I just feel like effective wise, like I'm more effective on the phone.
Totally.
And I'm better in an office. So it's like I just leaned into that pillar, right?
Yeah.
Where some people will lean into open houses, but whatever pillar that is for you, like if you're watching and you are open houses or some like social media now is a huge pillar for some people's business. Huge. And I personally post on social. Have I gotten any business? No. So I don't consider it a pillar necessarily. I think of it more of a brand thing for myself and the team. However, I think long term though, like you were saying, it really comes down to finding a balance. And for the longest time, I never believed in balance. I never thought I studied successful people, and every time I asked them like, hey, was it balanced when you came up, right? Or when you kind of made this transition? And a lot of them would say no, like there was phases and, it wasn't this harmonic balance all the way through. So I guess in my opinion, it's more of like a pendulum and it might have like been something that maybe you were doing like where when you were at family, it's just making sure you're with family. I know me and Robbie have spoke about this, like turning off the phone, not being worried about the client leaving you. And then when you're at work, just, like focusing. You said, focus at work.
Giving that full attention to the client when they deserve it, giving the full attention to your
And I'm still bad at it. Bad at it.
I don't
it's
think
hard.
Anybody's great at it.
Yeah.
Like, even when I'm not like working, I still end up getting sucked into my phone on social media, and I'm like, my wife's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, it's just like
Scrolling,
I don't know,
looking at
like what,
random
like
shit.
yeah,
The
like
other day you told me you were trying to find your Instagram. You're like, I hit it, and you like.
oh
you
yeah,
forgot
I hide
that.
I move my the icon around so
you
like
don't click it.
because I'll just like open my phone and like I'm going to like respond to an email and I'm just all of a sudden I'm scrolling.
It's open, yeah.
I'm like,
know.
dude, like it's
How in
so.
the hell did that
Sometimes I'll remove it completely, like
Yeah.
not because I'm like, oh, I'm going on like a social detox or anything. I'm just like, if I can't find it, then I actually do what I'm trying to do. You know, it's like
For sure.
find myself like typing in Instagram.com.
Yeah, I know,
Like
that's-
it's like it's like if I had to think about it, then it's like okay, I'm gonna slow it down a bit. So
No, that's
Yeah.
cool, and I think I mean we really appreciate you coming on, and
Yeah.
I mean I've learned a ton, and hopefully I'm sure our audience has, and I think you've connected, and definitely I think just hearing your backstory on kind of your family and your kids. I mean I'd love to go out and have dinner one of these nights.
Yeah,
and
it'd be
hang
awesome.
out, man.
yeah,
Yeah, this has been great, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate you coming on. I'm glad
Yeah.
to finally meet you. I'd heard of you before at the Young Guns a couple
Yeah,
years
yeah.
ago. So
so
cool to come full circle, man.
Yeah,
for
Appreciate
sure.
you coming on.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to Young Money Mindset. We appreciate you guys being here. Dylan's been an awesome guest to have on the podcast. Super grateful that we could have him on today. And if you guys have any questions, all of his info will be linked down below. Feel free to hit Dylan up. I'm sure he'd be happy to share his story and provide more value to you
Absolutely.
guys. So thank you again for being on, and we
Thank you,
appreciate it,
guys.
man.
Yeah, appreciate you. Thank you.
Appreciate you, man. See you in the next one.